We begin with the latest developments in that huge warehouse fire. The abandoned building went up in flames last night. The fire department says it is one of the biggest fires in years.
At one point, a third of the city's firefighters were actually on the scene of this fire. Many of them remain this morning in the 3700 block of South Ashland. ABC 7's Jessica D'Onofrio is there live with the very latest. Jessica?
Judy and Jose, it is the biggest fire that the Chicago Fire Department has had to battle in years. Take a look. Talk about fire and ice. This vacant warehouse is completely encased in ice right now. Overhead, Chopper 7 HD showing that fire crews are still here trying to put out hot spots. This fire was so big that a third of all firefighters with the department were here at one point trying to put out the flames. They eventually did after battling some brutal conditions. Chicago firefighters could do little to stop the flames from spreading through the large abandoned warehouse on South Ashland near 37th Street. The glow from the huge blaze could be seen from our camera on top of the Willis Tower.
This was a very large fire, unbelievable fire load. A lot of wood, timber, old stuff, a lot of varnish and everything, and once it caught and ran.
A Chicago Fire Department battalion chief who was driving nearby was the first to spot the flames. He called for help, but as the fire quickly grew, more than 200 firefighters were called to the scene.
Everything's wood inside these buildings. Beautiful facades on the outside. They've been up for a very long time, and then when they start burning like this, they start coming down.
The fire burned through the roof and caused some of the floors to collapse. Because of fears that more of the building could come crashing down, crews had to fight the fire from a safe distance. They also tried to stop the fire from spreading to neighboring buildings. Besides dealing with the blaze, the frigid temperatures also made it a challenge for firefighters.
We run into a lot of problems like the ice weight, not only on the building, but on the apparatuses and the ladders and stuff. The overspray starts to build. We have to keep an eye on that. We have the water department to come out with their steam. They'll steam off our ladders and stuff to make sure they don't get too heavy. Of course, we have to watch as we start moving the gear. It's heavy. The streets are all iced up right now.
It's really just an amazing sight to see this icy building up close and also to see the Chicago Fire Department try and deal with these brutal conditions this morning. Now, the investigation into what caused this fire will move forward this morning. It's also going to take quite some time to clean up here at the scene. Live in the Bridgeport community, Jessica D'Onofrio, ABC 7 News. Judy, back to you.
Yeah, that is quite a sight. Jessica, thank you. This morning about a warehouse that was destroyed by a fire. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. This was the largest fire in Chicago in years. It actually started about 9 o'clock last night. This was at 37th and South Ashland. That is in the city's Bridgeport community. It burned for a number of hours. The fire is out now, but firefighters are still on the scene this morning, watching out for hot spots. ABC 7's Jessica D'Onofrio joins us live from the scene with the latest. Jessica?
Linda and Sylvia, right now the fire continues to smolder. Firefighters have been out here now for nearly 14 hours. They had this contained, though, just before midnight. Now, one fire official says the inside was all wood, like a big matchbox, so the fire rolled through quickly and raged.
It looks like a war zone. I mean, it absolutely looks like a war zone.
About 200 Chicago firefighters battled massive flames and braved bitter cold overnight to knock out a vacant furniture warehouse fire in Bridgeport, the largest in almost a decade. The fire so big that roughly 1/3 of the city's total firefighting power was there to help.
Over 30 years of being on the job, I've seen several fire alarm fires, but they are a rarity, especially when, you know, this type of magnitude.
Randy Smith owns a flag making company in the building next door. His workers make flags for places like Wrigley Field and the Shedd Aquarium. He watched as the fire spread to the windows of his warehouse, but firefighters were able to save his building, where there's a bird's eye view of morning flare-ups.
None of our merchandise burned. We've got thousands and thousands of dollars of United States flags in our warehouse upstairs, and none of that stuff got damaged.
The warehouse once belonged to Harris Marcus Furniture. Smith says hundreds of people used to work there until the company moved south. The building has been abandoned for about 10 years.
There's been a lot of squatters and people. They've removed all the pipes and, you know, the stories that you hear about scavenging.
Fire officials say as far as they know, no one was inside, but cannot be sure until they pick apart the building where several floors and walls have collapsed. Now what's left is a smoldering mix of fire and ice, which has encased the building in danger of full collapse.
So what you have really is a freestanding wall with heavy water and ice on it. So our concern is that any of the building can continue to collapse.
Right now, a wrecking company is here. They are taking apart part of the south wall and pulling apart some of the building so investigators can pinpoint where the fire started and how it started. Meanwhile, one firefighter was injured in all of this. He slipped on some ice, but he is expected to be okay. Fortunately, no other injuries were reported. Live in Bridgeport, Jessica D'Onofrio, ABC 7 News. Sylvia, back to you.
Okay, thank you, Jessica.
Now the latest on that massive warehouse fire, one of the largest fires in our city in some time. Within the past hour, all the firefighters had left the scene there. Some of them had been there most of the day fighting the hot spots that were flaring up at the scene at 37th and Ashland. ABC 7's Diane Patthew now joining us live in Bridgeport with the latest tonight. Diane?
And Alan, this massive warehouse is now one big block of ice. The fire department has pulled majority of its equipment from the scene. Now they're keeping an eye on those hot spots and any further collapse. Flames could be seen for miles. Fire swallowed this former furniture warehouse building. A fire chief driving in the area saw the flames at the south end of the abandoned building last night. Crews quickly rushed to the scene while the fire quickly grew inside the wooden building. And now, over 20 hours later, crews are still going to keep an eye on the smoldering hotspots.
We know it's going to smolder for at least a day, probably 2 days. We've been in contact with the building department. They've been in contact with the building owners. And they're working with their demolition team to get together their game plan, provide them the proper permits in order to start bringing in heavy equipment to start dismantling the building.
It's the biggest fire the city has seen in quite some time. It took over 200 firefighters to tackle it. Flames spread fast, even to the building next door, which houses Advertising Flag Company, Inc. Owners there got a call from their alarm company.
When I got down here, all of the window frames on the north side of our building were in flames from the outside, just from the infrared heat thrown off by the building that was on fire.
The windows were knocked out in the Flag building, and there's a lot of water damage. But Smith says the inventory was saved, and they will be able to come back to work. Outside, people from all over stopped to take pictures and videos at the building, which is partially collapsed and covered in ice. Guillermo Reek stopped to shoot video of the building to show his family back in Mexico.
I lived here for 25 years in Chicago, and that was my first time that I see one of those buildings like that.
And Kathy, fire officials will monitor the building throughout the night looking for those hot spots. And as you heard the deputy commissioner tell me on tape, this building could come down in the next couple of days. Just as a side note, let's talk about the weather a little bit, because the frigid conditions did cause very icy and slippery conditions all around this working area. And it did cause one firefighter to slip and fall and hurt his back. We're told he is going to be okay. Reporting live in Bridgeport, Diane Patthew, ABC 7 News. Back to you.
Okay, Diane, thanks.